Memoirs of a Dad, narrated by Malc, Cowle, Chapter 9. Tom commenced his school life in the first week of September 1986 at the Green End Primary School. The school was situated on Burney's Lane, no more than half a mile from where we lived, and I was impressed when introduced to Miss Tobin, his first teacher. At first I dropped him off on the tandem and then went to my work, finishing early to pick him up in the afternoon. But I was soon introduced to another single parent, Sandra by name, who had a daughter at the school. We agreed that she would take Tom to her home after school, and I would then pick him up from there, which enabled me to work for a full day. From that point on, our cycling adventures were governed by the school calendar. I stuck to that calendar when arranging our annual holidays, but it must be stated here that I didn't have the same problems that many parents experience of peak holiday costs during the 6 weeks of the summer holidays. We always went cycling and camping, so there was no pressure on me to organise a holiday, which meant taking Tom out of school. Moreover, Tom enjoyed school, and it was always a pleasure to meet his teacher. On one occasion, Miss Tobin confided to me that she had been surprised by what she called Tom's remarkable vocabulary. This, of course, was largely due to his experiences cycling and camping. He was exposed to conversations with a great variety of children and adults from a wide range of classes and political outlooks, cycling being a great leveller in that regard. He had travelled through many different regions of his own country, and thus had a grasp of the names of different geological features and of various animals, birds and plants that many of his peers only knew from books, if they were aware of them at all. He was also exposed to music, as I related in the previous chapter, but there was one major musical event we attended which will remain in my mind forever. I know it is one of my son's most vivid childhood memories, because he related his version of the story to his friends at an event in 2013. Just before he began school life, on Sunday the 28th of June in 1986, before we went to France, more than 100,000 people marched on Clapham Common for a festival organised by the musician Jerry Dammers in support of the anti-apartheid movement and calling for Nelson Mandela to be freed from prison. Margaret Thatcher was by then, to her eternal shame, calling for sanctions against South Africa to be ended, and she, along with a young David Cameron, was denouncing Mandela as a terrorist. In my wisdom, I decided we should cycle to the event, camping on the way, and when I suggested this to Tom, he did not disagree. I'd also decided it should be a sponsored ride, and any money raised should go to the African National Congress of South Africa. On the first night, we pitched our tent on a field somewhere in the vicinity of Burton-on-Trent, and by the second night we had reached the ancient market town of Towcester. Here we camped on the racecourse, and being a frugal parent, packed our tent early the next morning to escape any attempt at collecting rent for the land we had occupied. It was a red-hot day, and in such conditions Tom's ears tended to suffer from sunburn, and blistered as a result. In my haste to escape, I'd packed his sun hat in the tent. We were soon into the town of Stony Stratford, and I espied a small general store on the main street, which looked like a likely supplier of sun hats. The tandem was leant against the window, my son still in situ, and I disappeared into the shop and quickly purchased the required item. On my return, a middle-aged man was admiring the tandem. "I see you are on a sponsored ride. What is the particular cause you are supporting?" I had a simple sign on the right-hand pannier stating "Sponsored Ride, Manchester to London." "The ANC of South Africa," I explained. He promptly pulled out a £10 note, handed it to me, and turned to Tom, and then said, "And you've cycled all the way from Manchester?" "My dad's a kidder," Tom replied, his face deadpan. "We've just got off the train." Once again, my mischievous little lad had left me speechless. After a long conversation, and Tom's final confession that he had made a joke, we resumed our journey. I'd arranged to stay in London with John Murray, the younger brother of Mick Murray. John lived in a block of council flats in Brixton, not far from Tom's Auntie Jane, her daughter Sarah, and younger sister, Tom's auntie Hannah, who occupied one of the houses in the famous St Agnes Place squat. I knew precisely where the block of flats were, but had lost the paper on which the flat number was written. However, I had the numbers in my head, and soon found the appropriate door to knock on. To my surprise, a young woman answered my knock. "Is John in?" I asked. "He'll be back in about 2 hours. "Oh, this is Tom, and I'm Malc. John said we could stay tonight and Sunday night. We're attending the music festival on Clapham Common on Sunday." "We're going to the festival, but John never mentioned you. Come in, though." So in we went, and halfway through a cup of tea, she suggested we might like a bath. We agreed. Cyclists soon build up their own climatology, particularly under the armpits, and this can be somewhat disconcerting to people who bathe regularly and use deodorants, although it is very useful when trying to get served at a crowded bar, and I recommend it. Following our bath, I began to have a feeling we were in the wrong flat, and eventually asked if I could make a phone call. I contacted Jane, said I'd bring Tom over to see her, explained to our hostess where I was going, and gave her Jane's phone number. She agreed to ask John to phone me. When he finally did, he confessed he knew nobody north of the Watford Gap, and I confessed I had made a big mistake. John Murray, it turned out, lived on the 5th floor, not the ground floor. Apart from that, I got the flat number completely correct. The festival on Clapham Common was astounding, a festival both of colour and colour blindness, at which all shades and hues of the great British public were represented, along with numerous representatives of the British state in the form of the Special Branch. They evidently were addicted to following members of the ANC and the anti-apartheid movement, but as they were undercover, everybody ignored them. Artists included Sade, Peter Gabriel, Elvis Costello, Sting, the Style Council, Lorna G, Joe Scott Heron, Princess, Junior, Billy Bragg, Hugh Masekela, Mick Jones, and Big Audio Dynamite, amongst others. All the images I reproduce here are taken from a video of the event featured on YouTube. My apologies for my plagiarism, but it is in a good cause. By that time, Nelson Mandela and his comrades had been imprisoned under South Africa's notorious Suppression of Communism Act for some 24 years, and our Tory government would have been quite satisfied if they'd all died in prison. In truth, Thatcher's attitude to the apartheid regime was a true reflection of her lack of commitment to the concepts of freedom and democracy here at home, and her utter contempt for the mass of British working people, irrespective of their colour or ethnic background. As we travelled home to Manchester by train the day after, a memory popped into my head. I was standing outside an old Georgian terrace near Manchester's Hardwick Green, with my Auntie Beattie, opposite what was then a cinema, but is now better known as one of Manchester's music venues, the Apollo. We were waiting for a 2:10 trolleybus to take us home to Denton, after a visit to the dental hospital. Most of the houses in the terrace were by then lodging houses, but the one immediately behind us claimed to be a hotel. It had a sign by its door stating, "No dogs, no children, no Irish, no blacks." The year was 1953, and I was 8 years of age. I pointed the sign out to my prim and proper aunt, and she retorted, "There is only one race, Malcolm. The human race. Never forget it." I never have.